Welcome to Engaging Aging. I'm Erin Dr.
And I'm Lauren Watts.
We believe life gets richer with age, and we're here to prove it.
We bring you real conversations about aging well, living fully, and navigating this journey with confidence.
So let's dive in, because aging isn't something to endure, it's something to embrace. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to bring this really unique topic. It's a topic that we have not talked about before, and we talk a lot about a lot of different things. Lauren and I have been on our own journeys over the last few years, opening up, as many of you have heard, to different modalities, healing experiences. And something that came across our desk a few months ago was something called plant medicine. And when we heard about the healing benefits and qualities for older adults, we were really intrigued. And so what we typically do when we're unfamiliar with something is we do a full swan dive into it to learn all the beautiful things. And we're super excited to bring this topic to you. So if the word plant medicine sounds a little scary or unknown to you, don't worry. Most of you are actually participating with plant medicine every day and you don't even know it. From maybe the herbal supplements you take to the coffee and tea that you drink to the food that you eat. And so you're swimming in the waters and may not even know already. So we're thrilled to dive in today. What we do want to say as a disclaimer is we are not medical professionals. We're not here to diagnose or treat, but we are here to share some fascinating science and information with all of you.
So without further ado, welcome Reverend Leah Linder and Pam Convoy to the conversation. Erin and I, as Erin just mentioned, have been ingrained in a lot of different conversations with both of you. And we are so excited to finally have you on the podcast to be talking about all things. Both of you are experts in plant medicine and therapeutic integration. So I'd love for both of you just to kind of start a little bit about your background and how you came into this space and the magic that you're creating together to be able to share with our audience and audiences alike moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I can say it's a true joy. Thank you kindly for having us on your podcast. And it's something that I feel so remarkably passionate about. I have been in the medical field. I'm a naturopathic physician, but also worked in the Western medical field. So collectively around 20 years or so. And so being a naturopathic physician, root cause medicine is my dearest passion of finding what is actually going on at the base level. And we address that because we're each our own unique individuals, and treating the whole person is really important. And I think that mental health very often is a taboo. Is something that we don't talk about. You know, if you break your arm, you can obviously see something's going wrong. People ask you about it, but mental health is one of those things that sits in the background, and we don't have a lot of space in our culture to actually talk about that, or even potentially a lot of people that we can talk to about it. And there's a stigma around not being mentally strong. And so the way that this all came about, it actually came to me. So I have, a wide variety of patients in my naturopathic practice that are very high functioning individuals, people from architects to business owners to ER docs to nurse practitioners and the whole gamut. And 1 week I had 3 different patients come to me and say, oh, I listened to this podcast, or I watched this documentary, or I, read this article, and I really want to introduce microdosing. What do you think about it? And in my ignorance at that time, I had only witnessed plant medicine, specifically psilocybin, being more in that recreational realm. And so I said, okay, let's pause. Let me do some research and see if there is some potential that I can stand behind as a physician. And the research was there. There is heaps of research as far as supporting various mental health conditions, from treatment-resistant depression to anxiety and PTSD and alcohol addiction. And it really surprised me about the depth and breadth of research that was out there. And so it was one of those things that I was like, okay, let's go ahead and give it a try. And it was a profound catalyst of change for my patients. So they had all the baseline, naturopathic practices on board. We were addressing sleep and diet and interpersonal relationships and nutrition and, all of those really yummy things. And this was the one thing that really flipped the switch in such a profound way for people. And so Pam and I used to work together at a professional supplement company, and we hadn't seen each other in a while, and we're out having lunch together, and I was telling her about this, and I was like, gosh, it kind of feels like it needs to be in the water because it has such a strong safety profile of any other psychoactive substance, including alcohol, including nicotine. And, there's, these, the US FDA even, classified in 2018 and 2019 and designated psilocybin as breakthrough therapy for the treatment of PTSD and depression. And that really opened up the space for these clinical studies. And I was so excited chatting with her about it. And then Pam's beautiful entrepreneurial brain just clicked on. So I'll let her open up to where it went from there.
Yeah, thanks, Leah, and thank you, both Erin and Lauren. It's a real pleasure to talk about this. There's a lot of passion behind this project. So as Leah mentioned, we worked together. My background is in biology. I was a clinical laboratorian by training, but spent most of my life in marketing in the medical space, from conventional medicine to animal health to nutritional supplements. So when Leah was explaining this to me, I'm thinking, wow, I didn't even realize we were in the middle of a renaissance. Virtually every academic institution worth its salt here in the US has a psychedelic laboratory. There's been a tremendous amount of research on both macro versions, so we can talk about the differences between macro and micro. But micro is sub-perceptual, so you don't have a psychedelic experience. Macro being perceptual, you definitely have a psychedelic experience. So as Leah was mentioning, there has been just a profound amount of information on mental health as well as cognitive health and things like Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, because of the functional mechanisms of these mushrooms, which I think we're going to dive into, but I'll skip over that for the time being. So I knew that there were ayahuasca churches here in the US operating pretty openly. So I'm thinking there has to be something with the church kind of structure that allows for the use of these entheogenic plant medicines. So it actually turns out that in 1993, the federal government, so this is a federal legislation, passed a law called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And this was specifically for indigenous peoples that for hundreds and thousands of years have been using these mind-altering plant medicines for spiritual practice. So the legislation itself talks about when entheogens, these types of plant medicines, are being used in sincere spiritual practice, not defining what the medicine is and not defining what the practice is, just that it's a sincere practice, that's protected use. So this doesn't affect legalization. Each state and municipality has their own attitudes about this, and there's a lot of progress in the US. Right now, finding a legal path and or a medical pathway to use psilocybin in these ways. But as a church, we actually have a protected use clause, and that, again, it's nationwide. So I built a church. We are a 501(c) religious organization. We behave as a church because that sincere use clause is very important. So a lot of our education or kind of sermon sermon practices are around naturopathic medicine and whole wellness. So it's not just all about the mushrooms themselves, but also your diet, your lifestyle, how much sunshine you get, how much exercise you get, the health of your relationships, grounding with the earth, hot and cold therapy. There are a million tools to help center people and bring them to a higher level of wellness. And we see it as our obligation to expose all of these different tools, and then each individual sort of builds their own toolbox.
I love that. There's two things, sorry to chime in here, two things you both mentioned that are like core of what we see for challenges with our older adult clients. One, unaddressed mental health, maybe challenges or concerns. This is definitely a population that was raised without conversation or discussion around mental health support or needs. And then just the limited access to, I hate to use the word geriatric, but like geriatric specific providers is extremely limited, and most resources are hard to maybe technologically tap into if it's like virtual visits and whatnot. But the second is the treatment of just symptoms. So Leah, you hit on that a few minutes ago. Like so many people are seeing traditional medicine doctors for treatment of symptoms, but no one's looking at that holistic person, like you just said, connecting with nature and sun and interpersonal relationships and what is the health, hydration and nutrition. And I think that's such an important component for us to talk a little bit about, that is the practice in which you recommend to people. Is this isn't just this like magic plant medicine. You're looking at the whole person and helping them create that toolbox, so to say. So tell us a little bit more about that work that you do. And we know, and we're going to talk today about, you do have older adult clients and you are seeing amazing success stories. So it's helpful for, I think, our listeners to understand when someone starts to work with you, how do you dabble into this space with them?
That's a really good question. And I think that it takes a whole care team, right, to witness whether or not this is going to be something beneficial for the individual. And I think that just like you were saying, Erin, Lauren, no, Erin, sorry. Your brain is like all like at this moment.
That's okay.
That, real root cause medicine is addressing the systems, not the symptoms. And that takes a whole team. So very often it is the family members that are witnessing that, their elder elder parent is needing some cognitive support, that they're starting to see their mind shift. A lot of times there is mood dysregulation that happens as well. There's pain and there's inflammation that's on board, that maybe isn't necessarily being addressed at that root cause. Sleep is another huge issue for these individuals too. And then opening into that you're not yes, maybe you're getting older, but that you're not necessarily at the end of your ability to have creativity, have fun, have joy, have play, and addressing that quality of life and that, that existential well-being, I think is really important. And then also being social. Like those are the things that we see so often in the individuals that we participate in, these elder adults that have cognitive challenges, is that there is that hiccup of wanting to engage. What if somebody's going to judge me? What if they're going to do this? So from a psilocybin perspective, and maybe I'm not answering your question, but I can talk a little bit about how psilocybin can affect those different areas.
I think that'd be helpful.
Okay, so it's kind of starting from the top. So from a cognitive support, psilocybin is able to target what's called the 5-HT2A serotonin receptor most prominently. And this is in our prefrontal cortex. So this is all about our judgment, all about our self-perception, how we engage in language, how we engage with other individuals, how we read the room, if you will, and figure out how we can contribute to that. And so psilocybin is able to enhance what's called neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. So by targeting those receptors, it basically ignites different parts of the brain to grow new neural pathways. And as we go through cognitive changes, as we get older, finding different ways to do the same thing can be a really beneficial thing, because maybe it's not, because our brains are habitual organs. They love doing the same thing all the time. And if those patterns start to get hiccuped, then there's a huge amount of frustration of like, I know what I need to do. I know that I've done this before, but I can't figure that out the same way that I've done it. By creating this neuroplasticity, it's like, oh, let's find a new neural pathway. Let's grow new, what's called dendrites, new nerve endings to come to the same conclusion. And the other part of that is that it creates synaptic plasticity. So what was a normal pathway that we've traveled down many, 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 many times, now we can find a different route around. It's kind of like when we use our GPS system, that it routes us around the heavy congested traffic. So that's really, really important. And there are some studies that demonstrate that it supports memory, it supports those executive functions, such as interpersonal skills, high-level thinking, and then also attention, especially in aging brains too, because sometimes we get a little bit more distracted. And so like keeping that attention, keeping that focus, I think can be really beneficial. Coming down the list, the next one is mood regulation. And you guys feel free to pause me because
keep going. It's fine.
Yammering on all this stuff. So,
Yeah.
mood regulation is a huge part of it. So it's seen that low doses of psilocybin can, again, stimulate those serotonin pathways, which is all about depression and anxiety, both in younger individuals and older individuals. So it can enhance that emotional resilience and reduce the rumination, the rigid thinking patterns, which is so common in people when there are a bunch of life changes happening at that, and the elder stage as well. And then pain and inflammation modulation. So psilocybin is a potent anti-inflammatory, especially in the brain. And so this can help not only with chronic pain issues, but also age-related inflammation. And because it also is able to alter pain perception and the emotional response to chronic pain. So like arthritis and neuropathy, this is something that is just, because when we're in pain, like it's hard to step outside of that. And so psilocybin has the ability to shift that perception of, maybe this is just something that I can now manage versus, this is just what I have to deal with.
And like a belief rewire, right? So when we have those new connections, new neural pathways, maybe a little bit less pain, we're able to approach life with maybe a different, like you said, mindset over time. Is this over long-term use? I know there's been so many studies, and we will, by the way, everyone, have links in the show notes to some of these scientific journals and articles, as well as Pam mentioned the most universities have clinical trials going on. But is it usually over long-term use, or do people notice changes pretty quickly?
So it depends on the individual. A lot of the clinical research is done on either single macro dose journeys. There are very few on actual microdosing, even though they work through the same chemical pathways and have the same benefits. But I would say that, most individuals, especially elder individuals, they might not necessarily notice the significant changes that are happening, but their caregivers will. They'll notice that there's more peace in the home. They'll notice that they're not so defiant. They'll notice that maybe they have more of an appetite or want to engage more in social activities. And so that's the thing with microdosing, is that it is subperceptual. So it's that lower dose and it works in that background. And so what we see very often with individuals with cognitive challenges, cognitive decline, is that within about a month or so that the caregivers are saying like, whoa, what has shifted? What has changed? Some individuals respond more swiftly, some need a little bit more time. But the reason why I see this as true medicine is that the more you use it, the less you need to achieve the same benefits.
Mm.
And so it's not something like most conventional pharmaceuticals where you build up a tolerance and have to continue to titrate up. Individuals actually are starting to see a benefit at these low doses, and that the benefits continue to increase.
That's amazing.
So it's so interesting. Our listeners are made up of older adults, adult children, professionals, and people that just love to dive into the crazy things that Erin and I dive into as well. But the reason for me saying that is because what we learn from our older adult population that brings so much wisdom is this is not necessarily a crazy conversation for them to have around plant medicine, right? And they've had conversations about this in the past. It might be for their older adult children that are listening, or for professionals that are supporting them. What have you both seen in the shift in conversation from just everything that's happening? So Pam, you talked about all of these research centers that are literally diving into this. Why are they taking the time to do it? And what successes are they literally seeing from these trials that they're doing that would switch our listeners right now from what the heck are you talking about to truly leaning in and understanding the benefits of micro and macrodosing?
So psilocybin is, as Leah mentioned earlier, very safe. It has a very, very strong safety profile. And a lot of our mental health conditions are not treated very effectively. You know, people get parked on an SSRI for literally decades without any therapy, without any lifestyle support, which is kind of criminal, honestly. And, you know, one of the interesting areas of research is in PTSD, so trauma. And the VA hospital itself, another government facility, is very in tune to and very supportive of potentially using plant medicines like psilocybin, like MDMA also, to help people shift out of their stuck pattern. That's one of the things that psilocybin and others traditional psychedelics are great at, because you are getting that brain-derived neurotropic factor where you're growing new pathways. New pathways are new concepts, new attitudes at looking at things. So in the case of trauma, the trauma still is there. You're not going to forget about the trauma,
Right.
but it doesn't own you anymore. You're not enveloped by it. It's just something that happened. And, you know, our veterans are killing themselves on a really regular basis. There aren't very effective treatments, and these plant medicines have shown to be. And in things like cognitive decline, early onset Alzheimer's, that the traditional pharmaceuticals are not that great for this, right? We don't really have a cure. We have things that can try to slow down plaque development and such, but a lot of people aren't even eligible for these newer biologics. And you mentioned that, you know, we do have a patient sort of basis of people that are in that position. So cognitive decline and other neuroinflammatory conditions. And we get most of those people that come to us from a neurologist. So, you know, he is, God bless him, he worked at Johns Hopkins, so was very aware of a lot of the research. That's one of the institutions that have more than 200 studies on psilocybin alone. So he will go over, here are your options. And in a lot of cases, psilocybin is an option. And why does he recommend it? Because it's safe. The science is there. You can try this and feel secure. If it doesn't work, no harm, no foul. It's not going to interfere with anything else that you're currently taking to manage your health. And his own father uses our products. And we have probably right now 25 to 30 of that category of patients, and they're doing really well. So we actually survey them. We keep in touch with everyone, but we also survey both the caretaker and the individual, which can be tough depending on, you know, how far advanced their condition is. But as Leah was saying, there is the first thing that people really see is that the stress level in the house has gone down. There is not so much anxiety. There is not so much fighting and frustration. And once that's gone, you can pay attention to the other subtle shifts over time. Like,
Do you
wow.
find that the caregivers also participate, meaning they see the benefit for
Yes,
that
sometimes.
they choose? Yeah, I could see that happening.
Sometimes I had a gentleman contact me the other day that said, my friend is such and such, and he's a cognitive decline patient, been through all kinds of therapies, and this makes a difference. I see it every day. I would like to order some for myself. So it's the people around you that see the subtle changes oftentimes before the actual individual does.
That's beautiful. When we talk about, you said it's a very high safety profile. Can you talk a little bit about the actual product and the level of quality and safety? Like, these pharmaceuticals where they're being created and the chemicals that are being used are very different than plant medicine. So just maybe some general advice for people who are considering plant medicine, like how can you trust the source and the type of product? I know that's something you're very passionate about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Pam.
I was just trying to say, and Leah can go into more detail, but because we both came from this kind of background, we're very familiar with how to source, where to test, how to manufacture, what all of the key factors are. So
Right.
all of our plant medicines are, and I'll let Leah go into how the pairings are set up, but the actual ingredients, they're all 100% organic. They're sourced in the United States. They're third-party tested for potency and purity. So we know they have the active ingredients that we're looking for, and we know everything we work with doesn't have any garbage in it.
That's great.
Very important. And then our microdose products are encapsulated for easy consumption. You can also take the powder out if you wish to, but it's just an easier way to kind of approach this rather than, measuring out mushrooms. And these are all encapsulated in an FDA certified, good manufacturing practice, qualified laboratory here locally, which is a little bit astonishing because of the nature of the product that we use. But that's just a wink from the universe that we were able to put all of the premium quality processes into making these products because of the legal status of it. If people are sourcing either mushrooms in a baggie from somebody that's driving with them in their trunk, or even gummies, they are almost certainly not going through these processes because of the legal status of them. So, someone's not going to be able to give you a certificate of analysis.
Yeah.
This is something that we feel very, very strongly about, that safety has to be number one.
Absolutely.
These have to be clean, high quality products.
In addition to quality product, Leah, Reverend Leah Linder, tell us about the other components that are essential for successful consumption, integration. Like when we talk about, maybe these may be new words to people listening, like set and setting, and like so we have quality product provided by heart-centered humans that are, in this world to do this type of healing medicine work. But what else goes into a successful experience for your patients?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, these are our clients, so I act only as friend in the church. I do not offer medical advice to these individuals, even though some of them do come over to my private practice. But I think that it's kind of three or fourfold in there. Our psilocybin product, we also have a nutritional supplement that I formulated all of them. I have a big background in supplement formulation. And so they're targeted towards three specific use cases. One is called Calm, which is for that more anxious, ruminative, can't calm down, can't slow down individual. And so it has the psilocybin aspect to it, along with some other functional mushrooms. But then there's also a supplement that is paired with it too, to help not only enhance the benefits of the mushrooms, but then also offer this entourage effect of other nutrients, other plant medicines that have a long history of use and application. So for example, in the Calm pairing, there's linden tree or tilia, which is one of my favorite heart centers, general, like gentle, loving, kind, soothing to the soul. It also has ashwagandha, which has a long history in Ayurvedic medicine for calming down that nervous system. It's called a calming adaptogen, which means it helps our bodies adapt to stress. And then it also has L-theanine in it, which is a calming amino acid. And so like this combination together is going to help overall support your natural physiology and your body's ability to be well, because I have a very big conviction that the body knows how to be well. It just needs the right tools to do that. We also have a focus pairing. So for those that are feeling a little bit more stuck on the couch, more depressive symptoms, even those that are on the neurodivergent spectrum, the ADD, the ADHD, that autism spectrum in there too, the focus pairing is really a bit more stimulating. So it has more stimulating functional mushrooms, as well as stimulating herbs in there as well, and warming nutrients. And then we have a third pairing called introspection, which is much more focused on healing old wounds. So PTSD, the trauma that, I like to say when I talk with large groups, raise your hand if you've never experienced trauma before. And nobody ever can, right? Because being human is a very challenging project that we signed up for. And so most people start with either the calm or the focus, and then they'll transition into introspection as they're wanting to dive deeper into that root cause as to why they're having these emotions in the first place. But again, I like to say that the mushrooms are the 10%, the integration is the 90%. Because it's just like, going to wash your car at the car wash. But if you live on a muddy dirt road and aren't choosing to take a different way to get home, your car's going to get dirty again, because again, the brain loves its habituation. And so the integration is, yes, set and setting when you are participating in the mushrooms, making sure that you're in a safe space that is not super stimulated, that you have a support system around you, that you feel comfortable where you're at. And then afterwards, utilizing that beautiful neuroplastic state to start to shift patterns. And that includes changing our habits, changing the way that we focus on nutrition, changing the way that we focus on hydration, and then other tools that we can bring in to help support our body's innate ability to heal itself. So for example, if somebody has lymphedema, which is very common in the older population, one of my favorite and easy things to do is water therapy, hot and cold therapy when you're in the shower. So it's not like, oh, I need to go to a sauna and go hop in a cold plunge. It can be as simple as like, oh, at the end of my shower, I'm going to turn down that hot water just a little bit, enough where it feels a little chilly. And then we do the hokey pokey. We turn ourselves around, and then we turn the hot water back up, and we do 3 cycles of that, actually ending on cold. And what that does is it opens up our blood vessel system, closes it back down, opens it back up, closes it back down. And that creates a natural pump so that the lymphatic system has an opportunity to drain itself, so that we don't feel so swollen, so that our ankles aren't super swollen. And that's super easy to do in the shower, because we're all taking a shower. Well, hopefully all of us are taking a shower.
That's a really great specific example of the integration of, it's not a magic pill. This is whole person. Everybody's situation is different. And I love that you talked about your pairings and the additional nutritional support for your mind, body, and soul that you're getting through the other non-psilocybin plant medicine.
But it's also you're doing it in the comfort of your own home. It's not like you're having to go to this massive clinical setting really to be able to do this. Can you talk a little bit about what is your process to evaluate someone to receive plant medicine, and what pairing that really would align best with them, and then how you support them through that journey as well? And talk a little bit about how often does someone take plant medicine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pam, do you want to start off with that and then I'll tag on?
Sure. So I can kind of go through the onboarding and the access and the initial screening. So because we are a church and we're operating under religious freedom protection, anyone who's interested in working with psilocybin with us, either in micro or macro format, needs to become a member. This is no cost at all. It's just part of the protection. So we can all say, us and the person that is interested in using these products, that we're doing it in a sincere way within a church structure. So that's just a protection step. If you're interested in, and part of the membership, we collect basic information, assuming that at some point that someone may be interested in exploring psilocybin. So there's some basic screening questions as part of the membership about their own experience in the past, with these types of medicines, any psychiatric medications they might be on, which are most of them are not a problem, but it's something that we need to be aware of because there can be a blunting effect with some of the SSRIs, for example. And there are quite a few people that come to us that like to wean off of that particular category of drug, which can be done in collaboration with their healthcare provider. And we have a pharmacist that is an advisor to us that's a great help in that particular situation. We also ask about cardiovascular disease because there are some potential shifts with taking psilocybin that may impact cardiovascular health. You know, your blood pressure goes up just a bit, body temperature goes down just a bit. So we just want to be aware. Again, as a church, we offer no medical services, but Leah's a physician. So if there's anything that comes up as kind of a red flag that, oh, we should probably talk to this person before they have access to psilocybin, then they will go to Leah as a medical practitioner in her own practice. So the church will pay her for her services because we're just a church. We're not a medical clinic. So there is for someone to select their pairing, there is a quiz on the site. So some people feel very confident. A lot of other people say, I need them all. But what we try to have them do is, okay, what's the symptom that's bothering you the most? And try to offer some guidance for the cognitive decline patients specifically. And because that particular neurologist knows us well and knows the formulations really well, those folks usually go toward focus. It's more energizing. It's more cognitively empowering. So that's typically the one that category leans toward.
That's great. I am really interested. You talk a lot about the work that you're doing with a local neurologist and the success that you've seen with the folks that you've been working with through him. Can you give us a glimpse into the success that you are seeing from folks that have Parkinson's disease, cognitive impairment? Would love to hear some of those stories without sharing too much confidential information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. This is probably our favorite part and why Pam and I, spend so much time making this work is that people are really starting to see significant shifts when they thought that they were just on a downhill trajectory. And it's beautiful to witness. Again, the caregivers, especially in cognitive decline, are like, oh my gosh, I got my partner back. Or I'm seeing more calm in the household and they're able to focus a little bit more. They're sleeping better. I'm finally getting them to eat again. They're not so defiant. I think that those are probly the big ones, which are absolutely huge, right? This goes
if you get told there's nothing we can do for you, to be able to participate in some form of healing modality for yourself and your partner. Like, I also don't want to minimize just that, like, they the ability to heal your brain, which you may feel like is failing you in some new ways, and to be able to create new neural pathways and increase your neuroplasticity in your 80s or 90s with an Alzheimer's diagnosis, I feel like that alone shifts people's beliefs and perspective, which is so probably beautiful, I'm assuming, to witness.
Absolutely. Also, decreased pain is a huge one. And we chatted about that, talked about that. That was my brain hiccup. Is that, its anti-inflammatory effects can really help with, chronic inflammation. And again, we know that if we're in pain, that is going to spike our sympathetic nervous system. We're not safe, right? And that can be a whole cascade of other emotions, right? Appetite decreases, sleep decreases, anxiety is more prevalent, anger is more prevalent, lashing out, those types of things. So if we can calm down that inflammatory response, then the whole system says, oh, I can take a break. I can eat. I can rest. I can eat some food, digest, then their bowel movements increase and they don't have to have their suppositories and their laxatives, because a lot of them are on these, chronic pain medications that encourage, constipation. But I think that one thing that I've witnessed, especially in our integration circles, is that there is this increased openness and this creativity, like the desire to play. So as it breaks those habitual patterns of like, I'm broken, it promotes that psychological flexibility that can help with life transitions, that can help manage the grief of a diagnosis like that. And also the loneliness of like, I'm going at it alone, right? They're able to reconnect with themselves and find a different way to orient to it. A thing that I like to say is that it's not the journey, it's not the mushrooms it gives you, and it's not the trauma that you've experienced. This gives you an opportunity to see it in a different way, which is kind of what Pam was saying as well. So yeah, the life transition.
Sorry, I was just going to give you a couple of objective measures too, just to add on to the lovely stories. We use validated surveys, meaning they have been clinically assessed. You use certain questions to try to judge change in both mood, but there's also one for Alzheimer's, actually, that the caregiver tends to fill out. And that talks specifically not only to mood, which is subjective, but also objective. How many, can you read the clock still? Can you do your monthly bills? I mean, those kind of really practical things. And we do see improvements over time with the objective measures, in addition to these really nice, heartfelt mood shifts. So we know that it's not just sort of a psychological, ooh, this medicine, is going to help us. It's actually changing. Okay, Ralph only checks his to-do list like twice a day now. It used to be twice an hour, that things are getting easier. It's flowing better. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, in a particular case that I'd love to share, and this was not an older person actually, but had neurological issues, a very complex health history, a long history of psychiatric medications. And she came to us to do, so this is outside of the micro, to do a macro experience. It took her quite a long time to kind of get comfortable with it and do the research and speak to her neurologist several times, but she finally did come. She was terrified because a lot of people are frightened about something new, even though they've convinced themselves, yes, this is safe. What's going to happen to me when am I going to lose control? Am I going to fall apart? But the day starts and Leah does a beautiful kind of meditation and a little bit of movement and put people in the right setting and place up here. And she took 5 grams of mushrooms, so that's definitely a psychedelic experience. And this particular person spent most of the time sitting under a tree or being grounded in the grass. And after her journey, which is 3 to 4 hours or so, she came up thinking, oh my God, I've been such a terrible person. I take out all my anxiety, all the pain, all the things that I'm going through on my husband. He's done nothing but support me. How that's just terrible. That has to stop. And, the world is beautiful and I can manage this. It was just a complete shift in energy, attitude, everything, and it was durable. So, in our first integration session with her and her husband, they're both in tears, and her husband's like, I don't know what you did with the other lady, but thank you for giving me my wife back. So, 6, 9 months later, she's still in a really, really good state. She uses microdosing to help with her integration, to keep up that neuroplasticity. But people take breaks on and off. People will ask, when do I need to do another big journey? Or when should I stop or start microdosing? And we encourage people to listen to your body. Listen to the changes that you're making with the microdosing. For example, you might want to take a break after 3 months, but you can stay on this essentially indefinitely because we build in a lot of breaks so that the brain can integrate the subtle changes over time. So it really depends on the human being, but we do see very dynamic, very durable, very objectively measurable change.
When would you recommend doing a macrodosing journey versus just microdosing?
Ooh, that's a big question. It depends on the individual. I think that microdosing, again, is those subtle perceptual are those subperceptual shifts. And that can be really powerful as far as encouraging creativity, more focus, more engagement, adjusting mood. And some individuals really do want and need a little bit more of a shakeup, right? Their brains are very hyper-focused and fixed on this is the way, the truth, and the life of my trauma. And in that regard, that is when a macrodose can be very beneficial for individuals to view it in a different way. And the way that Pam and I like to explain it is that, as we're going down the river of life, we accumulate things. The water gets murky with the mud and the things that are not yummy to us. And what a macrodose journey can do is that, when we're up to our eyeballs and we're catching a little bit of breath every once in a while, but can't really get out of this muddy water, what a macrodose journey can do is it can basically pick you up and guide you over to the shore so that then you can stand on the shore. It's not that the river isn't still there. It's not that it's not still murky, but you can stand on the shore and view it differently. And then the next time you hop in the river to go downstream, it gives you the tools with the integration to build yourself a boat so that instead of swimming down up to your eyeballs, now you can sit on top of it and go a little bit further downstream with a different perception.
I love that so much. A saying I used to use all the time, and it's reminding me because I don't say it as much anymore. And I used to use this reference when referring to people's Alzheimer's journey, is that, by the way, have either of you been whitewater rafting before?
I used to be a guide on the Grand
Okay.
Canyon.
Wow.
So this is very apropos. If for any listeners that have not been whitewater rafting, it's very exhilarating. It's a life-threatening experience, but it's beautiful and fun and just embracing nature all at the same time. But I used to say Alzheimer's disease, you can go whitewater rafting, hang on to the raft for dear life, and you'll most likely get through the rapids alive, but it's going to be a very bumpy ride. And Alzheimer's disease specifically is a pretty predictable pattern of decline and kind of marked moments of decline overall. And there's no need to go down that kind of rapid alone. That with the right guide, you can enlist a whitewater rafting guide or a cognitive impairment specialist or Alzheimer's practitioner to help say, hold on, here's what's coming. There's going to be a big bump coming around the corner, but like, we got you. We can help buoy you through those moments and experiences so that you're not just white knuckled reacting. And I love the idea of like these big life transitions. And obviously the reason we're so passionate about bringing this information to our clientele is aging doesn't have to be so white knuckled and scary. Like, this is the time to embrace this chapter with some more lightness, with some open receptivity. Like, there is nothing to lose and everything to gain with living your best life later in life. And like, why not tap into these tools? I don't want to be like Pollyanna, but when we looked at all of the clinical research, especially here, even in the Boston market, many universities have these clinical studies. Are we thinking that this will become more clinically acceptable and mainstream? If so, like, is that the hope and the goal here, that more of the masses will get on board with this plant medicine?
Yeah, I really do believe so. That's why there is this incredible renaissance of research, because again, it's root cause medicine. People are getting better, or feeling better. And that is so important, especially in the mental health realm. And, Lauren, one thing that you meant, or excuse me, Erin, that you mentioned, you guys are both blonde now. And so is that one thing that I think is so important is that we have such a culture of idolizing youth. And that is a travesty to me, because elder wisdom is so invaluable, and the stories and the lineage of what elder individuals engage in, and their perspective on life being so different. I feel that needs to be, have access to the younger generations. And so that's one thing that I'm so excited about, is that if we can help support the mental health of our aging population, then we get the transcendence of all of that history, all of that knowledge, all of that perspective into these younger generations, which is so needed in this rapidly evolving culture that we have, where, I make fun of, well, not make fun, but like the new phrases that like Gen Alpha is like putting out every single week, and like how they're shifting language so much. I mean, that's beautiful and awesome in itself, but it also, we need the historical context of where we got to that place in the first place. So yes, I do think that because of the profound effects that research is already seeing, there is heaps of desire to continue to explore where that's going to go, what we can, gain from research, because like, we don't know about the long-term benefits of what this might offer. Most of the research, again, is in a certain setting one time or over, a 6-month period. But understanding the long-term benefits is still something that we absolutely need to explore from a research and clinical perspective.
So just a little bit more, if you'd like to hear about sort of the legalization status, the development as a pharmaceutical, because I think that's what you asked also. So psilocybin currently is still a Schedule I drug, meaning the FDA has said there's no therapeutic value, which is nonsense, and a high degree propensity for addiction, which is also nonsense. But this came from 1970. All psychedelics were thrown into this Schedule I bucket. So because of the FDA again, right, same institution, because of that breakthrough therapy status, it allowed for more research, so licensed research on psilocybin. But that research is typically done on an isolated small molecule of psilocybin that is tagged with the name of the company, basically. It's not really literally the name, but it allows them to isolate the mechanisms to be as objective as possible when looking at outcomes. And it also allows, if it's successful, if the study's successful and then it becomes legalized, that that particular entity has a patented molecule that they can then sell. So Oregon was the first state to completely decriminalize. They went down a non-medical route, so it's not tied to a diagnosis, which in large part is a real benefit because you don't need a diagnosis to actually have an experience with these mushrooms. But there's not a lot of support, number one, built into that model. And because of the layers of bureaucracy and licensing and insurance and all of this kind of thing, it becomes very financially inaccessible for lots of folks. So we are kind of stumbling along. I think there's a lot of interest in accessing the value of these mushrooms. But as a few states and municipalities start looking into how to legalize it in a very responsible way, you have a bunch of unintended consequences. One being that you're missing out on all of the other benefits of a whole mushroom versus just that particular molecule. And this is just how pharmaceuticals work. And then there's this other issue of financial inaccessibility for people who could really benefit from this, just because of the structures that are built around the access. So we haven't figured it out. There is a lot of sympathy for using these kinds of medicines because they are so safe and they look to be very effective where a lot of pharmaceuticals are not. So I think we want to be there, but I think it's going to be a long pathway before it will be readily accessible to people in the most safe, responsible, supported way.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that that's one thing, just to tandem on that real quick, is that there is accessibility to psilocybin in the form of gummies and all kinds of different things on the internet. But one thing that they're not doing testing. So for heavy metals, for mycotoxins, for potency, for tertiary alkaloids and other terpenes that are located in these whole plant medicines. And they're not providing what's called a certificate of analysis of like, I did third-party testing. So you say that you have this much in your product, show me the proof kind of a thing. And that's so important if we actually think about this as medicine, that this isn't something recreational that we're actually participating in. We're going at it with conscious intention to help shift our mindset and provide the benefits to our brains and bodies. And that intention to start off with of quality ingredients that are third-party tested, that creates the foundation for the intention of utilizing this as medicine for that profound shift. So it's not just like, let's like try this out. And I have a little hesitancy because the market is like, everybody needs to microdose. And even though like, I think that they can benefit a lot of people, they're not going at it with that intention. And I think that that is, again, the foundation of what needs to happen for people to participate in these medicines.
And that's why we have you both here today, because we know your level of ethics and quality and your purpose, passion, research behind this. And we're just thrilled to have this conversation and to bring this to the older adult market space. Listeners, we would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Please leave a message or a comment. Reverend Leah and Reverend Pam were kind enough to offer all of our listeners a complimentary 15-minute consultation. So you can find that information in the notes. We're also providing a deeper education on this through an e-webinar, our plant medicine education e-webinar. So make sure to follow Engaging Aging and Dovetail Companies for more on that. Where can people find you directly to learn more information?
The World Wide Web is the best way. So we are Setas Seminary, Setas pronounced like lettuce, but it's SETAS Seminary, SEMINARY.org.
You can also find us on social media at setas.seminary, and that is also our Facebook and Instagram handle.
Fantastic. We hope this is the first of many conversations to our clients and our professional peers. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today. We love having these conversations, and we hope they sparked something for you too.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and share it with your community, because together we can change the way the world sees aging.
You can find us at dovetailcompanies.com or on any of our social media channels at Dovetail Companies.
And just a quick note, the opinions shared in this podcast are those of our guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Engaging Aging, Dovetail Companies, or our team.
So until we see you next time, keep engaging with aging.